Hi, Sean. Thanks for joining me today. Would you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm Sean. I'm a rising sophomore, so second year at Columbia University, studying economics and political science.
Okay, cool. So I know you're doing some work with climate change at Columbia over the summer. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm working on a project at the Columbia Business School called the Climate Knowledge Initiative. And basically what the aim of the project is to research decarbonization pathways for some of our economy's most carbon heavy industries. So personally, I'm doing a research project on the food system, and how different parts of the food system can either contribute or harm efforts to decarbonize our economy. And I'm specifically focusing on biofuels. So what that means is I'm researching different technologies and different ways we can maximize efficiency using biofuels, which are fuels that are derived from plants, crops, waste from agriculture, waste from animals, use cooking oil and stuff like that, and basically how that can contribute to decreasing the amount of emissions that we emit on a daily basis.
Okay, cool. So your project, is it more kind of like data science or like collecting data yourself? How does it work?
Yeah, so basically what we do is for each technology, we basically create an outline, which is called a storyline. And that basically is telling a story about the technology, why it's important, why we think it's worth investing in. And it's basically a guideline for businesses and big companies to look into kind of ways that they can decrease their own emissions. So we're basically providing information to do that. So what I'm doing right now is we're creating a basic overview of biofuels, what they are, the different types of biofuels that exist, and which types of biofuels specifically are able to reduce emissions versus others that might not be as helpful in that goal.
Okay, cool. So what kind of led you to do this kind of work? Because I would imagine that it's not directly what you're majoring in.
Yeah, for sure. So Colombia has a pretty good sustainable development program, which is basically looking into the different systems that we have in place that contribute to climate change, that contribute to fighting climate change. And so I was really interested in that. And I took an environmental science course my first semester at Columbia, and I really enjoyed it. So I decided that during the summer, I would want to pursue something that had to do with the climate and understanding how we can reduce emissions. And so I was looking for opportunities within that space. And then I came across something that also had to do with my other interest, which is economics and political science, like looking at policy, looking at the economy. And this was a perfect opportunity to kind of combine those interests. And so I thought it would be something that I could pursue during the summer, and it turned out to work out. So that was a great opportunity for me.
Okay, cool. So this is definitely a great opportunity. So do you think that it might influence kind of what you do in the future, whether that's at Columbia or like in the workforce or anything like that?
Yeah, I definitely say so. It's given me a glimpse into the different aspects of climate change. So whether I want to work in government policy, it still gives me a very good background on the types of laws and regulations that really affect the types of technologies or the types of initiatives that people decide to pursue or not. And if I want to pursue something like finance, I'd definitely be more interested in the financing side of these projects, how we can make sure that a lot of these projects have enough funding, what goes into choosing which company to invest in, things like that. So I think it definitely provides me a lot of pathways for exit opportunities in terms of what I want to do in the future. And it also gives me a lot of optionality because I can apply the knowledge that I've gained this summer and use it to further my career in whatever type of field that I want to go into.
Okay, cool. So the program that you're doing this summer, is it kind of like an ongoing thing? Like, are you going to do it next summer or is it like just this year?
I think I'm going to pursue it during the school year, which is pretty cool because it's run by the business school. And I'm going to be an undergraduate student continuously. So I'll have more opportunities to work on the project, which is awesome.
Okay, cool. So can you talk a little bit about kind of like before college, if you had any interest in like climate change or environmental science that like maybe you weren't able to pursue in high school?
Yeah, so I wasn't really a big science person, so I decided not to take environmental science in high school, but looking back, I definitely would have. My main exposure to climate change related ideas came from my extracurricular participation in activities like debate and model UN, and it's obviously a very pertinent topic that comes up a lot when you're talking about various different policies that are going on and various policies and issues that are happening around the world. And it's a very important thing to consider when you're thinking about the future and what to do about climate change as a whole. And so that's where a lot of my interest came from. And then when I got to college, I was kind of deciding like which classes to take, and I really wanted to learn more about climate change because it's easy to say that you're interested in climate change and want to talk about it, but it's also important to have that kind of academic backing to make sure that you're actually understanding how climate systems work, how natural disasters happen, and what the source of climate change is on a scientific level instead of just like on a qualitative level.
Yeah, definitely. So, would you say that you've been facing like any kind of challenges in the program at Columbia right now in terms of like whether that's pursuing your project or kind of like spreading awareness or things like that?
I think I think climate change is more of like an intersectional issue than a lot of people think it is, and so I think it would be helpful for other people, especially within like other departments, not just sustainable development, but also like economics and political science, to learn about climate change. And there aren't that many classes that have a big focus on it, and I appreciate it if there were more opportunities. But I also think that I will pursue some classes. For example, there's this class called Global Politics of Climate Change, which I'm looking forward to taking next year, which is through the political science department. And so I think there are opportunities for people who want to pursue them, but also because climate change is going to be such a big part of our lives, I think there should be some kind of not mandatory, but pretty prevalent option to learn about it if students decided they wanted to do so.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's definitely really important, kind of like expanding educational opportunities for climate change for students. So, what would be like one piece of advice that you might offer to high school students who are maybe kind of interested in climate change but didn't exactly have like the academic background like you were talking about?
I think something a misconception about climate change is that it is very like at least learning about it is that it's very science heavy. And while I do think that science is important and having that understanding of science is important, I personally don't think that I'm like a very science heavy person, and I'm a lot more interested in the policy aspect of it um, than the actual material science part of it. So I think understanding that learning about climate change is a pretty interdisciplinary issue. It's not just hard scientists; it also has a lot to do with social sciences, and you can also learn about it through a humanities perspective if you wanted to. And so realizing that there are a lot of opportunities to learn about climate change besides just taking like an environmental science class is going to be helpful when you're picking classes and picking opportunities in terms of like internships and things like that.
Okay, yeah, definitely. I think that's something really important that people need to be more aware about, that climate change is an extremely broad field and it touches basically everything. So yeah, I think that's a really good piece of advice. So is there anything else that you might say to either like high schoolers or undergrad students who kind of like want to go into the field, but from like a more nuanced perspective, kind of like you are?
I think definitely wanting having an interest in renewable energy, climate change is super important. So if you have that interest, definitely try and pursue it in whatever method you can. I mean, I probably want to go into finance, but I want to focus on energy, power, utilities within that realm, and I'm not, and I want to pursue that in the long term. So trying not to give up on that earlier on and like do other things because you think it's more stable or something like that is probably a good first step in making sure that you're actually pursuing your passion of climate change because it's really interesting and it is going to become a lot more important in the future than even already is. And so having that willingness in the first place is probably important.
Okay, great. Thanks. So that's really good advice. And I think that pretty much wraps it up. Thank you for taking the time to do the interview today. It's been really helpful.
Of course.